Reaching the end of the path, you see a mimic attempting to eat what looks like a very large frog. When it notices you, it lets out a little gasp, and the frog leaps out of its mouth and settles on the creature's lid. "Oh! You really do look awful," it laments. "You shouldn't say such things," the frog croaks. "For all you know, they've always looked like that." The mimic tisks softly. "Come, come, sit down and rest. I won't bite, and neither will Wolf." "I might," the frog croaks. The mimic ignores the frog, their attention still fully on you. "You really should take a nice long rest. Maybe it will bring some color back to you. And while you do, Wolf and I can tell you one of my favorite stories." Seems every mimic you meet either wants to give you advice or tell you a story, but at least they aren't trying to eat you. So, before we can tell you this story, Wolf is going to give you some basic world lore, because this is the story of the characters we played in an Exalted 2nd Edition game. You expected the frog to start talking, but instead, a mimic with wolf ears and tail that you hadn't even noticed begins his epic tale.
Exalted is a high fantasy tabletop role-playing game that is often described as anime-inspired. It is a world of epic stakes where players take on the roles of demigods, capable of massive feats, designed to change the world rather than to live in it. The important lore stuff to know is: the world of creation is the stage. Creation is a flat, finite world shaped from chaos by ancient beings called the Primordials. It's defined by the 5 elemental poles. At the center you have the Blessed Isle, which is a vast central continent, and the elemental pole of Earth. In the north you have the Arctic pole of air, in the south you have the desert pole of fire, and in the east you have the forest pole of wood, and finally in the west you have the ocean pole of water. Creation acts as kind of like a beacon in the dark. At the center, it's at its brightest, and the farther out you get, the darker it gets, only in this case, instead of it being light that's being shed, it's more of a fundamental laws of reality we know, like time, space, communication, self, all that stuff. The super short version of each major era is as follows. There's the Primordial War, in which the gods that were created by and forced to act as the servants of the Primordials yearn for freedom. Unable to strike their creators directly due to a powerful Gesh, they empowered humans with exaltation shards of power, allowing them to fight the Titans. At the end of this war, the fallen Titans became the Neverborn, because edgy, and the Titans who surrendered were imprisoned inside the body of their king, Malpheus. Don't ask, it's more than I have time to get into in a single video. The first age followed, in which the Solar Exalted, the champions of the unconquered sun, had won the war and become rulers of a golden age of magic and technology. This came to an end because of the Great Curse. You see, when some of the Primordials were defeated, they cursed the Solar Exalted, driving them to madness, hubris, and corruption. Next came the Usurpation. Fearing the Solars would destroy the world, the Sidereal Exalted, which are stargazing seers, helped the Terrestrial Exalted, or Dragon-Blooded, betray and wipe out the Solars, sealing away their soul shards. After that came the Age of Sorrows, where the Dragon-Blooded created a magical empire known as the Realm on the Blessed Isle. The world has slowly decayed for about 800 years since. The game setting starts with a massive power vacuum. The Scarlet Empress, ruler of the realm, vanished 5 years ago. The sealed solar exaltations have returned and are now seeking new human hosts. They're labeled anathema and are targeted by the Wild Hunt, which is basically a police force of Dragon-Blooded that hunted the few remaining solar sparks that hadn't been captured 800 years ago, and the Lunar Exalted, who mostly managed to escape. But with the full return of the Solars across the entirety of creation, the hunt isn't able to keep up. To make things worse, the Dead Titans created an underworld, which is basically a shadowed, decaying, and dying mirror to creation. Ghosts and the newly formed Abyssal Exalted, which are dark mirrors to Solars, are also emerging and seeking to destroy all life. The world stands on the brink of a civil war with multiple factions led by Death Lords, Fairy Folk, Realm Houses, Rogue Gods, and pretty much anyone who thinks that they have a chance at taking a piece of this pie. You play as the Solar Exalted. Importantly noted that in at least the 2nd edition of the game that there's a hard set number to how many of these exaltations there can be of any given type. There are 300 Solar Exalts, 300 Lunar Exalts, 100 Sidereal Exalts, and now because of some weird shenanigans, the number of Solar Exalts has been cut in half, meaning that there's only about 150. That's because of the Undead Titans. I'll get more into that in another video. Typically, the Solar Exalted are the defaults for the players. They are, by design, the most powerful chosen by the sun. Warriors, kings, sorcerers who can do pretty much anything humans can, but basically way better. Then there's the Lunar Exalted, which are shape-shifting tricksters and warriors that are bonded to Solars as mates and protectors of the wild borders. You also have the Sidereal Exalts, who are seers who can manipulate fate and manage the bureaucracy of heaven. Finally, you have the Dragon-Blooded, or Terrestrials, which are elementally powered, numerous, and ruling the Central Empire. They're considered lesser exalts, but that's because they don't have a hard cap number. Instead, they pass their power on through bloodlines. Finally, you have the Abyssal and Infernal Exalted, which are twisted and corrupted and demonic versions of Solars. More on them later. The tone is basically an over-the-top cinematic action where cool actions called stunts are rewarded with dice bonuses. It's kind of a mix of Chinese wuxia and Greek mythology and anime, martial arts, and magitech, like Gundam animes, all rolled into one. It's a high-power, low-security game where players are incredibly powerful even at start, but are often fugitives in a world that fears and hunts them.
The other mimic stares at the wolf mimic for a few moments more, as if waiting for him to continue, and when he doesn't, they turn back to you. Well, that's that then. Now that you know about Exalted, don't forget to follow along with us so you can hear the rest of the story.